When you think about the Crusades, you probably picture a very black and white conflict.
Mm.
Christian Europe against the Muslim Levant with the battle lines drawn by faith.
That image, as powerful as it is almost completely wrong.
It really is. Because in 1108, right in the thick of it, two very strange armies met in Mesopotamia. On one side, you had a Muslim governor, Jawli, fighting alongside a major Crusader count, Baldwin of Edessa.
And on the other side, the army opposing them was led by the Crusader prince Tancred of Antioch, who was fighting with his longtime Muslim tributary, King Ridwan of Aleppo.
It's just one of the most unbelievable moments from that entire period.
It is. It's genuinely astonishing. And the contemporary sources, especially Muslim chroniclers like Ibn al-Athir, they don't just report it. They write about it with this tone of, well, almost disgust. It just shatters that simple narrative of Christian versus Muslim.
And that's our mission today. We're going to trace the deep roots of this event, what the sources call the 1108 alliance between Muslims and Crusaders of the East. This wasn't some noble peace treaty.
Not at all. This was a messy, desperate military collaboration born entirely out of self-interest.
It really shows you just how chaotic the power structures were on every side.
And to clarify the stakes for you, these alliances happened because the leaders involved had enemies who were closer and honestly more threatening than their religious opposites. The priority was just immediate survival.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start where the whole system began to crack, and that's the collapse of political stability in the Islamic East, long before the First Crusade even got anywhere near Jerusalem.
That internal chaos is the absolute foundation for everything that follows. When the First Crusade arrived in 1097, the Muslim world was in the middle of a massive civil war.
Right. The Great Seljuk Sultanate, which basically controlled the Abbasid Caliphate, was tearing itself apart after the death of the Sultan Malik Shah in 1092.
So that's 5 years of total chaos before the First Crusader army even shows up.
5 years. Malik Shah was this huge unifying force, and the second he died, the succession crisis just kicked off. You had these infant sultans, like 4-year-old Mahmud, being used as pawns.
And then a brutal civil war between Malik Shah's adult sons, Barkiyoruk and Muhammad.
A decade-long struggle.
It was relentless. It wasn't just a squabble. It was a massive military conflict that just drained the whole region of money and manpower. So when the Crusaders first appeared, the Seljuks were too busy fighting each other to really notice.
They saw them as a minor problem, not a real threat.
Exactly. A manageable irritant. And this fracturing went deep into Syria too, didn't it? Malik Shah's brother, Tutush, had his own kingdom, but that also split.
Right, into two rival states, King Ridwan in Aleppo against his own brother, King Duquag in Damascus.
And these two brothers spent more time and energy fighting each other than they ever did thinking about a joint response to the Franks.
Ridwan eventually became so isolated that he had to, pay a huge annual tribute to the Crusaders in Antioch.
A huge tribute. Essentially a protection payment to Bohemond and later Tancred. This tells you everything you need to know. Local survival had already trumped any idea of pan-Islamic loyalty years before 1108.
So if the Muslim leadership was completely splintered, the Crusaders were, they were no different. Their feuds were often based on these deep, bitter personal hatreds.
Whoa, absolutely. We have to talk about the rivalry between Tancred of Antioch and Baldwin of Berg.
Because this is the emotional core of the whole story.
It is. It's what eventually pushes Baldwin into an alliance with a Muslim warlord. Back in 1097, during the March East, Baldwin just humiliated Tancred. It started at the fortress of Tarsus.
Tancred negotiated its surrender peacefully.
He did. But then Baldwin shows up with a much larger force, and, well, he basically tells Tancred to get out.
Wait, so not a battle, just a strong-arm move against his own ally, this is mine now.
Precisely. Tancred was outnumbered and had to retreat. Then Baldwin followed him and took Samosata from him, too. The sources say Tancred never forgot that humiliation.
So these guys were rivals from day one, undermining each other constantly.
Which brings us to 1104, a huge turning point. The Battle of Haran. Bohemond and Baldwin made a temporary truce to capture this fortress, but even then, they didn't trust each other.
And the disunity during the siege is just incredible.
It is. The Syriac chronicles give us these amazing details. Baldwin secretly sent messages to the Muslim defenders, telling them not to surrender to him, Bohemond.
No way.
Yes. He was playing a long game. He hoped his allies would give up and leave, and then he could swoop in later and take the fortress for himself.
That is just blatant sabotage of their own mission.
It's pure self-interest. His ambition was more important than anything else, and of course it backfired. When Muslim relief forces arrived on May 7th, the divided Crusader army was crushed.
And Baldwin was captured.
Baldwin and his cousin Jocelyn, and their fate immediately became a political tool. Jekormish, the governor of Mosul, literally stole Baldwin from his allies' camp to get the ransom money for himself.
And his rivals, Bohemond and Tancred, they weren't exactly in a hurry to free him, were they?
Not at all. In fact, Tancred took over Baldwin's county of Edessa as regent. It was perfect revenge for what happened at Tarsus.
What's fascinating here is that this wasn't one unified crusade. It was just a bunch of overlapping personal kingdoms.
Exactly. And the local Muslim leaders, like Ridwan of Aleppo, they immediately took advantage. After the defeat at Haran, he was able to reclaim territory he'd lost to Antioch. He was using their infighting to his own advantage.
So you've got this deeply unstable system on all sides, which is the perfect environment for an opportunist to rise. Let's talk about the main orchestrator here, the warlord Juli Sequoia.
Joli's rise is just textbook opportunism. He starts as a loyal servant of Sultan Muhammad, who makes him governor of Mosul in 1106.
But he was way too ambitious to just be a governor.
Oh, much too ambitious. He seized Mosul for himself, acting more like a king than a vassal. He was now a very powerful, but also very disloyal player.
And he had two incredibly valuable assets.
He did. The captive crusader, Baldwin of Edessa, and the former king of Damascus, a young man named Artash. Jolly knew these weren't just prisoners, they were political pawns.
But his ambition was about to collide with Sultan Muhammad's plan to restore order.
Right. The Sultan was cracking down on rebellious vassals. He had just executed a powerful emir named Sadaka.
And Jolly knew he was next on the list.
He did because he'd refused the Sultan's order to fight against Sadaka. So that gave the Sultan the perfect excuse to send an army to take Mosul.
And when Jolly hears this massive army is coming, he makes this incredibly cynical move.
It's brilliant. He has to flee Mosul, but he leaves the city in the hands of his wife. Why? Because she was the daughter of a powerful emir, and her brothers were serving in the Sultan's army.
He was betting they wouldn't attack their own sister.
He was. He used family ties to neutralize the threat to his capital and buy himself time. Just ruthless political chess.
So now he's on the run and he needs allies. Fast.
And this is where religious identity just ceases to matter. He marches out with his prisoner, Baldwin of Edessa, and frees him. He relinquishes the huge ransom that was owed 70,000 Mikalate dinars.
70,000 dinars. Just to put that into context for you, that's like the annual tax revenue of a major city. An absolute fortune.
And in exchange for that fortune, he gets a military alliance.
Baldwin agrees immediately. Why? Because his main goal wasn't fighting Muslims, it was getting his county, Edessa, back from his archenemy Tancred.
Tancred had flatly refused to give it back. Baldwin was so consumed by this personal feud that he was willing to ally with anyone, even Muslims such as Jolly of Mosul.
So what was Jolly's endgame here? It wasn't just survival.
Not at all. His real ambition, which he shared with his new Muslim rebel allies, was to use his other hostage, King Artash, to overthrow the Sultan.
He wanted to install Artash as a puppet Seljuk Sultan.
Precisely. The sources describe Artash as foolish. Jolly's goal was to become the Atabek, the real power behind the throne, the shadow ruler of the entire empire.
He was using a crusader count and a bunch of rebels to try and take over everything.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this was pure realpolitik. These rulers were operating on a local level, prioritizing immediate survival and ambition over any kind of grand ideological loyalty.
And this huge power grab by Jolly, it threatened everyone. It forced others into their own, equally strange counter-alliances.
And the key person here is King Ridwan of Aleppo. Ridwan already had a deal, a humiliating one, but a stable one, with Tancred.
He was paying him tribute.
Exactly. But Jolly was a much bigger, much more unpredictable threat, especially after Jolly seized the city of Balis from him.
So Ridwan, facing this greater danger, appeals directly to the man who was extorting him, Tancred of Antioch.
He warns Tancred that if Jolly succeeds, he'll be a threat to both of them.
And Tancred, who probably loved any excuse to fight his old rival Baldwin, agrees immediately. He sends 1,500 knights.
And they join with Ridwan's Muslim cavalry. The makeup of these two armies is just surreal.
Let's just lay it out for you. On side one, you have Jolly's rebels, a defiant Muslim governor, other rebel leaders, and the Crusaders Baldwin and Jocelyn, who just want their land back.
Plus some Armenian forces, a real coalition of the discontented.
And on side two, Tancred's establishment alliance. You have the Crusader Prince of Antioch fighting alongside his own Muslim vassal, King Ridwan of Aleppo.
The battle lines were drawn by personal debts and immediate threats, not by the cross or the crescent.
The climax comes in September 1108, the Battle of Guba.
And the battle was an absolute mess. It just highlighted how fragile Jolly's alliance really was. Tancred's knights charged and managed to defeat the Edison forces.
So Baldwin and Jocelyn were beaten.
Right, and at that moment, Jolly's Muslim troops, seeing how things were going, they just started deserting. In fact, some of them turned on their own Edison allies right there on the battlefield.
So Jolly is just abandoned.
Completely. He's left with maybe 1,000 loyal riders. He loses the battle because his whole alliance just dissolved, as one source put it, like salt dissolving in water.
And the aftermath was just as swift. Jolly flees, but then he gets word that Mosul has already fallen to the Sultan's army anyway.
His gamble failed, so he surrenders to the Sultan, begging for forgiveness.
And that puppet king he was going to install, Artash.
He hands him over to the Sultan immediately. His entire imperial dream was just discarded the second it wasn't useful anymore.
Meanwhile, Baldwin and Jocelyn flee back to their fortress, their main goal retaking Edessa.
Yep.
A complete failure. Tancred still held it.
So this whole alliance, this grand, strange moment, achieved absolutely nothing for them.
The 1108 alliance was this dramatic but very short-lived example of local self-interest just completely trumping religious identity. This wasn't East versus West. It was a messy series of local power struggles.
And it was only possible because both sides were so deeply divided. The Seljuks are at war with themselves, and the Crusaders, well, the feud between Antioch and Edessa created the opening for this whole thing to happen.
For leaders like Jolly and Baldwin, the priority was personal gain, not religious solidarity.
The alliances of 1108 were defined by a simple question. Who did you fear the most in that exact moment? And that raises an important question for you to think about. In a world of such fragmented power, when personal vendettas and survival matter more than anything else, what happens to the sacred ideologies that leaders claim to be fighting for?